Being specific matters. I think, it's very different covering health than it is covering a service delivery protest about water, for instance. If you go to a service delivery protest, or if you go to an area that doesn't have water, everyone doesn't have water. Whereas if you want to explore certain issues about healthcare, you really have to find very specific people to bring that sort of patient voice or a community voice to that. So, for instance, if you wanted to look at covering maybe World Nutrition Day, and you wanted to look at how the lack of equitable access to healthy food in South Africa impacts people's health, you would want to look for a type 2 diabetic patient, right? Not a type 1 diabetic patient. And because people with type 1 diabetes, that tends to be something that you get as a child, and it's more sort of a combination of a lot of other factors that are not diet, whereas type 2 diabetes is really sort of diet related. But if you don't understand the difference between those, the person that you find for that story may not make sense. Not every doctor is an expert in every subject, so make sure you're asking the right question to the right person. I think we've seen previously, 24% of people are going to their local GP when they get sick. Local GPs are great, and I think I would really encourage you to find a local GP in your area who you can use as an expert. They may not be the best person if you want to look at something like genetic DNA sequencing for COVID strains, right? So really figuring out who's the best person to speak on an issue. If you haven't taken a look at the latest copy of the press code, I would urge you to. Just remember, we never identify rape survivors, survivors of sexual violence. That includes intimidation and harassment. We never disclose someone's HIV status without permission, even after they've died. The press code does allow for caregivers to grant you permission to disclose a child's HIV status. I, as a personally, would caution against this because we live in an internet age. And we can talk a little bit about that, but if your publication publishes online or on Facebook, the internet tends to remember, and I think that's something that has potential ramifications when that child grows up. When you add in details that describe a person, such as their race or their HIV status or their nationality, I think a good rule of thumb is to always ask yourself, is that detail really necessary to the story? Why or why not? Obviously, rape survivors, survivors of sexual violence can choose to be identified if they want to speak out as survivors, which can be very empowering for a lot of people. You may want to give those people options of sort of a pseudonym or a fake name. But those are just some quick highlights from the press code.